let me just bring you up to speed. We're discussing right now the visit of Marco Rubio to France, and the implications of this when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, NATO, Iran, and the nuclear talks and all of that. So let me just ask you: Rubio and Witkoff discussed renewed nuclear talks while warning of possible U.S. military action. What's the end game here, and how are the European capitals responding to this?
Well, when it comes to Ukraine and when it comes to Iran and Europe and the United States, one common theme is the United States is trying to settle these crises or conflicts in the making without the involvement of the Europeans at all. So in Ukraine, they are completely sidelining the Europeans, and in Iran also they are sidelining the Europeans, even though Germany and France and the United Kingdom were an integral part of the negotiations over the Iranian nuclear program. However, now it seems that the United States is more interested in dealing with this matter unilaterally, whether through bilateral negotiations with the Iranians, hoping that they can reach a deal that can neutralize future Iranian nuclear capabilities that would render them unable to develop nuclear weapons, or through resolving this militarily through a joint action with Israel that also the Europeans are not being consulted on. And in both cases, the problem in Iran, or the crisis in Iran, directly affects the European Union's interests, its economic interests.
So do you believe, sir, that there's also going to be some sort of response from the European side to tell, the representative of the US, Marco Rubio, that Europeans are not happy with how things are being dealt with?
Of course, they aren't, and they have made this very clear. However, the Americans do not really care. If anything, Marco Rubio is in Paris when he will discuss these files with his French counterpart. All he will do is vaguely brief him on the issues of Iran and Ukraine, and will not be showing any interest in the involvement of France in the nuclear negotiations with Iran, or of course the peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine that have not even started yet. And what's really amusing is that the United States so far is failing to deliver through its methodology. It's failing to deliver on the Ukrainian front. President Trump has promised to end this war within 24 hours of his election, not even his inauguration. However, over 3 months now have passed, and he has been unable to do anything about this. And the war in Ukraine is only escalating, and Russia is escalating the offensives against the Ukrainians. And on the issue of Iran, it seems that there are positive indicators of the negotiations. However, it's too early to assess whether these negotiations will be ultimately successful. And even if they are, in the cases of Iran and Ukraine, the problem is that they will not take European interests into account, meaning that they will not be under interest, and this matter will not be a part of the conversation. And of course, This causes great dismay to the Europeans and great concern as well.
So basically, the Europeans are feeling a bit sidelined. Can we also talk a bit about trade? Now, Trump's tariffs are straining the US-EU economic ties as well, not just on the political front. How serious is the risk of a full-blown trade drift, between the US and the EU? And what does this mean for future relations between the two parties?
It seems that now the overall relationship between the United States and the European Union has grown to be very antagonistic. And of course, the issue of trade has ignited an almost breakdown or a near breakdown of relations between the United States and Europe, as now they are engaged in a quasi-trade war. Trump did not exclude the Europeans from his massive wave of unilateral tariffs. All of the European Union has been subjected to very stiff tariffs from the United States, and it seems that the U.S. is interested in ending the trade deficit between it and the EU, and it sees that its trade relationship with the EU, according to Trump, is not fair, is not just. He sees that the trade surplus in favor of the European Union the margin is way too wide, and that the Europeans impose a lot of tariffs and customs on American goods entering European markets, and this is not reciprocal on the American side. But of course, it does not take into account the massive industrial output of the United States itself, which exceeds the industrial output of Europe, and also that many of the companies that are sending their commodities from Europe to the United States are American companies. So this is something that Trump fails to take into account. He's a protectionist. He does not believe in the idea of free trade. And of course, the European Union's concept is entirely based, their entire economic philosophy and even their partnerships beyond Europe are based on free trade agreements and free partnership agreements. So when Trump tries to unravel that, it of course risks unraveling the entire relationship between the European Union.
But also Trump has been known to flip-flop a bit when it comes to his policies. Do you think that this will be also taken into account from the European partners, that, you know, he may wake up tomorrow and decide no tariffs?
Trump is open for negotiations with regards to tariffs. He did place a 90-day moratorium or suspension on his tariffs, including to many European countries. And the 70 nations that he mentioned who are now negotiating with him new trade deals include the vast majority of European nations.